You know, the older I get, the more I realize how many people out there won't watch a single movie older than themselves. That's a tragedy considering most movies nowadays are trash. But that's why I'm here, so let's rectify these crimes against God and good taste for your sake and our children's sake. Because today, the Movie Howze is here to retro-recommend. Upon seeing The Flash last month, because its plot linked so closely to it, and because it just celebrated its 10-year anniversary, I've had Man of Steel on my mind ever since. The first film in what is the now dead DC Extended Universe. Back in 2013, it was simply an action-packed reintroduction to Superman that received a mixed critical reaction. For sure, it made money, it found an audience. But in the decades since, general opinion has shifted the narrative in its favor, evaluating it now as a superhero movie that offered something wholly unique from its contemporaries, standing in stark contrast to a now devolved, oversaturated genre. I've been praising Man of Steel ever since it came out. Years back I did a sound-off defending it, breaking down and countering its most brought-up criticisms, and I think I did a fairly good job there, but I've never actually reviewed the damn movie on my channel. And because the newest reboot of the franchise, written and directed by James Gunn, has officially found its Superman, now's as good a time as any as to retrospect how and why this got made, and why I like it so much when my contemporaries on my side of the internet constantly shit on it. I'll try my best not to repeat much of what I said in my original sound-off because it's still one of my favorite videos I've ever done. I think you should still watch it. This needs to be a companion piece to it. It needs to be its own thing. So for a brief history lesson, let's go back to the summer of 2006. Superman Returns has underperformed. Its attempt to go back to the Silver Age optimism of the Donner films rang hollow to a jaded audience in the post-9/11 world. It didn't help that the movie suffered from a terrible plot, a severe lack of action, and Superman for that matter, and having no real identity of its own, which gave the film the feeling of a $200 million fan film made by fans who hadn't really done their homework. Warner Brothers took the complaints many had to heart, no punching and not forging its own path being chief among them. So it was back to the drawing board to bring Superman back to the silver screen in a big, bold way. WB began taking pitches from various comic writers like Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison, and that insufferable twit Mark Waid. But the pitch that got closest to actually being made was this epic trilogy written by Mark Millar, with Kingsman's Matthew Vaughn directing it. That's the one I think that really could have been something special given that team's pedigree. But when your studio's new golden boy, Christopher Nolan, fresh off the earth-shattering success of The Dark Knight, comes to you saying that he and his co-writer of that movie had a take on Superman, that's going to be the one that wins the day. Their hook was, how would the real world react to the discovery of a godlike alien walking amongst us? It covers all the basics of the last son of Krypton's origin, but tells the story of how Clark Kent becomes Superman with a more grounded edge. Man of Steel's success lies in it bringing a greater sense of depth to the classic comic hero, while finally delivering the type of action comic fans have always wanted to see brought to life. I know there's many out there who hold the Chris Reeve films as sacrosanct. I love them too, but guys, be honest.
Can you read my mind?
They're just as flawed. Let's not be precious about it. Taking the title and inspiration from John Byrne's critically acclaimed 1986 post-crisis relaunch of the character, the decision to essentially take a first contact alien invasion film and slap a big red cape on it was a solid one. For as popular as the character is, I can't even count how many times I've heard normies say, wait, Superman's an alien? Hell, even John Peters, the infamous hairdresser turned producer of both this movie and the original Batman, apparently didn't realize Big Blue was a little green man from the planet Krypton when he first got a hold of the rights to the character.
Who the fuck is Kal-El? And I was like, Kal-El is Superman. He's going, all right, why? And I was like, that's his Kryptonian name? He goes, I'm like, Krypton's where he's from?
Although Chris Nolan came up with the story alongside screenwriter David Goyer, he was too busy with The Dark Knight Rises to direct Man of Steel. He stayed on as a producer though, and his influence is definitely felt throughout, with a structure very similar to Batman Begins, utilizing non-linear storytelling and heavy use of flashbacks. Helm in this flick instead would be action maestro and overall comic dude bro Zack Snyder. He's a divisive filmmaker for sure. I personally like most of his movies. I said most. Even filmmakers I like can release utter shit. Sometimes it's their own doing, sometimes it's studio interference. Many have said he wasn't the right person for this film, but I disagree. I think he does a great job. There's a quiet serenity in the scenes between Snyder's normal wheelhouse of bombastic action that to me shows he really took this job seriously. There's moments that almost look like out of a Terrence Malick flick, you know, when Kryptonians aren't face-fisting each other. Inspired by Nolan and Goyer's take, Snyder wanted to change the way he traditionally shot his movies, forgoing the almost exhibitionist levels of slow-mo, and instead went for a documentary-style one-camera shoot. It's not shaky cam, but he wanted to filmically support the story's main conceit of superheroes within the real world. This results in some incredible action. The superpowered fisticuffs that make up most of the film's third act takes what was always there in the comics, combined with additional inspiration from anime like Dragon Ball Z, and results results in superhero action with a level of kinetic speed and sense of raw power films released even this year fail to match. You feel every hit as it's accompanied by a sonic boom. And removed from all the critical analysis, it just looks cool. Can't shit just look cool? Superman melts a steel girder Zod swinging at him with his laser vision. My Slurpee-addled inner child is outward bound, telling my critical eye to have a Coke and a smile and to shut the fuck up. But none of this killer action would mean anything to the movie if it didn't have a solid cast and great characters. And this is another area where Christopher Nolan's influence is felt. Much like Batman Begins, which itself took a cue from Richard Donner's Superman, the title hero is a lesser-known actor, but the ensemble surrounding him is absolutely stacked. Henry Cavill had the daunting task of creating a brand new Superman in Clark Kent, and he too, like Snyder, treated this seriously, shaping his body into a walking monument to testosterone, even insisting that Clark should still have his chest hair instead of being as smooth as a baby's ass. So he's definitely the most comic accurate depiction of the Man of Steel, but at the same time, he couldn't just imitate Reeve like Brandon Routh was told to do in Superman Returns. His Clark Kent / Kal-El is a quiet, lonely soul who, despite wanting to keep a low profile, can't not help people in need. He really does feel like a country boy from Kansas, raised to stand firm and keep his strength in check. He drinks beer, watches college ball, loves his mom, and goes to church when seeking guidance. Complementing his performance is the two young actors portraying his boyhood and tween self, Cooper Timberline and Dylan Sprayberry. They both do a good job with many of the flick's more emotional scenes, a tall task for most child actors. You see how terrifying his powers would be to a young child, not knowing what's going on with them. At the same time, you see the joy and wonderment of realizing what he can do with said powers, like being able to fly, which is one of the best scenes of the whole movie. Rather than him spending 12 years at the Fortress of Solitude learning about poems and philosophy before saving a single soul like in the Donner film, this movie posits that Clark, while searching for answers, has been acting like a guardian angel wherever he roams. You see how his Good Samaritan acts affect people for the better, like a bully saved from drowning by Clark becomes a more decent person. This version of Clark Kent is one, despite being dropped in our reality, as flawed and as damaged as it is. As much of an outsider Clark feels he is, he still sees our qualities, our capacity for good, our cries for someone to save us, and that he would still answer that call. This take captures Superman better than Singer's film ever did. It doesn't matter that aesthetically that film appeared more comic accurate. Just because that movie rides the coattails of the Donner films doesn't mean it understands them. You godless heathens might not want to admit this, but ever since the 70s, when the musical Godspell had the Jesus character wearing a Superman shirt, and the 1978 film leaned even harder into the biblical allegory, Superman has had the subtext of a messianic figure within the secular age. This movie takes that to heart and draws inspiration from scripture without being as shamelessly overt as Superman Returns was. Clark being full of doubt and unsure of his place in the world before taking that leap of faith mirrors the same doubts and fears Christ felt within the Garden of Gethsemane before accepting his fate as mankind's savior. So if even the Son of God can feel these emotions, so too can the last son of Krypton, okay? Cavill has said multiple times he's very proud of this movie, and I don't blame him. He's also, in as nice of a way as he could, shared his disappointment with how the character's story progressed with subsequent films. This ends with Clark shedding his doubts and finally accepting the role of Superman. That's why it's called Man of Steel. He's not fully Superman in this movie yet. I'd argue he's not Superman until the very last shot of the movie when he smiles at the camera as a reference to the Donner films. This is how Clark Kent becomes Superman. It's the road to discovery. After establishing him here, the sequel was the opportunity to have full-blown Superman. Much like the one we have on the Superman and Lois show, minus the typical CW teen drama shit. Which, quick aside, is there like some unwritten rule that's linking Superman to singer Chris Cornell? Because both this movie and the season 3 finale of Superman and Lois use songs by him. I'm not complaining, I mean, I dig the songs, I just noticed it. But anyways, because WB skipped straight to BVS, we now had a Superman that didn't gel with where we last saw him. The hero gig is a burden to him now. He dies before he's fully earned mankind's trust, meaning his death lacked the weight the movie so desperately tried to convince us it had. That's why, in contrast, all his stuff in Zack Snyder's Justice League hits so well. It feels more in keeping with what Man of Steel set up. And you gotta feel for Cavill, man. Warner's tells him he's back for a proper sequel that would be the type of follow-up he had hoped for. They tell him to announce it to the world he's back. Many of us got pumped. I remember theorizing that because Cavill had been in Mission Impossible 6 with Tom Cruise, maybe they could get the director from that movie or Top Gun Maverick to direct the new Superman film, and that would have been perfect. Fast forward a few weeks later, and the dream was dead. He's gonna go down as the most squandered talent of the last decade, screwed left and right by studios and productions because he actually cares about the properties that he gets attached to. He yeeted himself off The Witcher because he clashed with the writers because they admitted they hated the source material and just took the gig as an act of Gramscian subversion. Cavill's one of us. He just happens to look like a Greek statue, and he deserved better. Russell Crowe may have had even bigger shoes to fill in as Jor-El. Marlon Brando brought such a sense of class in that original movie, but Crowe, I feel, lives up to that legendary performance. He himself an incredible actor. His His version of Superman's biological father has a more proactive role in the beginning of the film, and he actually gets to take part of some of the action, which, fair enough, you don't cast Maximus Decimus Meridius in your movie and don't have him throw down. Islet Zarir, who's best known as Vanessa Fisk in Netflix's Daredevil, plays Jor-El's wife and Cal's mom, Lara Zor-El. With the limited screen time she has, she conveys the bitter sacrifice of a mother having to let go of her newborn baby to save his life. Superman's adoptive parents, Jonathan and Martha Kent, played by Kevin Costner and Diane Lane, are equally wonderful, which... Okay, this is an anecdote, you don't have to believe me, but back in 2007, fresh out of high school, I started writing like 40 pages of a Superman script. You know, it was terrible. I'm glad I lost it ever since. But when I introduced Martha Kent in the script, I literally said she needs to look like Diane Lane. I just find that ironic. Either way, I'm not getting paid for it. Casting a pair like this that have been in films that evoke classic Americana made the Kents feel like genuine salt-of-the-earth decent people without a whole lot of screen time devoted to them. Lane's seen talking down a scared childhood Clark or Costner's
Can I just keep pretending I'm your son?
You are my son.
go far into making you feel the way their son feels about them. Shedding the late-night meet-cute flight set to a sappy ballad and actually portraying a good journalist for once with the capacity to properly spell, Amy Adams brings Lois Lane into something far more contemporary. The decision to have her actually be in on Clark's secret identity was an inspired one. Removing the whole her not being able to distinguish this from this, and her and Cavill have good chemistry. You buy her being his anchor to this world. Then there's Michael Shannon's General Zod, bringing the same level of intensity to every project he works on.
Frats don't like boring sororities. Oh, wait, double fucking newsflash. Sigma Nu is not gonna wanna hang out with us if we fucking suck.
Unlike how Terrence Stamp portrayed Zod as a textbook definition of a mustache-twirling villain, and God bless him for it, Shannon Zod is haunted by the violent acts he commits, but will do them again and again to fulfill his mission of preserving his dying race. And when that purpose is taken from him, you see the madness in his eyes. He is a fantastic villain, filled with pathos, but never once do we lose sight of how much of an evil bastard he is. His sub-commander, Feora, played by German-born Antje Traue, sorry if I mess up her name, is low-key the true menace of this movie, though. The Battle of Smallville sequence is as memorable as it is due to seeing this little pixie throwing down and ripping soldiers apart. You see how I'm praising her? People respond positively if you do a decent job writing a female character and give solid justification to why she's able to beat up grown-ass men beyond "Yes, Queen, slay!" She also has one of the coldest-ass villain lines ever.
A good death is its own reward.
The rest of the supporting cast, featuring Lawrence Fishburne, Richard Schiff, Harry Lennox, and Christopher Maloney, all get great little moments to bring extra gravitas to the picture, with Maloney in particular taking advantage of finally being in a big film and not just playing Detective Stabler on Law & Order again, with the small but memorable role of Colonel Hardy. So it's got great direction, wild action scenes, and a fantastic cast to support it. But I'd be remiss to not bring up this movie's true secret weapon, the incredible film score by Hans Zimmer. He had the unenviable task of following the legendary John Williams' original Superman theme and create brand new themes for this movie that possess the same sense of flight, heroism, and American idealism befitting the character, all while tapping into the power and alienness of his origin to help make this its own thing. And he absolutely succeeded, much like Daft Punk did with the equally underrated Tron Legacy. It's not only amazing music that elevates its movie, it's also just killer background music to have on while you're writing, editing, meditating, and especially working out. Tracks like Arcade or What Are You Gonna Do When You're Not Saving the World, with their rock drum-led orchestra accompanied by steel guitar and powerful brass, gets you pumped. But okay, enough with the cinematic dick riding. What don't I like about this flick? Which, yes, as fangirly as I've been, I'm still mature enough to admit its flaws. Firstly, I do agree with the general consensus that the third act is overstuffed with action. The Battle of Smallville and the final mano-a-mano with Zod are great. It's the middle set piece with the world engine that's the problem for me. It should have been a self-reflective montage scene, with Clark finding the strength within the words of those around him, instead of just being an excuse to appease John Peters by finally having Superman fight a giant spider-like creature in the third act. Another detail I think that would have helped the fight scenes is if the suit sustained damage like it did in the post-Burns era comics. Even if Cavill does convey with his physicality when a hit hurts him, you gotta do more to telegraph to audiences that this is wearing him down so that we can root for him. Also, let's be fair, I don't think any of you ladies would be minding more topless Cavill scenes. The wrap-up feels like it's missing something too. There needed to be something at the end like the first Avengers, where you see the world's reaction to the Kryptonians' attack on Metropolis, and subsequently Superman revealing himself to the world to stop them. It's jarring as all hell hearing Lombard try to woo the planet's writing staff to a basketball game when, like, is the stadium even standing still? Is the team still alive? There's also the matter of production designer Patrick Tatopoulos' Giger-inspired take on Krypton. Not saying it's bad, most of it's really great, but there are definitely some Freudian snicker-inducing designs to things with the whole organic look to their technology. Then there's just dumb shit chalked up to editing, like how Lois Lane's able to find exactly where Zod and Supes landed when she was like miles away 20 seconds earlier. But really, my biggest pet peeve isn't the movie itself, it's how absurd and disingenuous much of the criticism towards it was, and how Warner's completely dropped the ball moving this franchise forward. I know this next section is going to echo much of what I said in my sound off, but it's been 5 years and fuck it, I got more to say. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. One of the biggest gripes people had with this movie was the portrayal of Jonathan Kent and especially his death. I can understand the whinging about this to a point, because it is so different from the comics, but it just serves an alternate purpose here than it traditionally does. It spells it out pretty clearly. The scene before everything goes Tornado Alley has what the movie is trying to convince us is a teenage Clark being all salty with Jonathan. Their last moments are Clark saying something very hurtful to Pa Kent, regretting it but never getting the chance to reconcile. When Jonathan tells Clark not to save him, the subtext is, "I know you can and want to save me, but you're not ready to bear the burden of the world on your shoulders. So because I love you, I'll proudly give my life to give you the time you need to grow and find yourself." Clark isn't not saving his father. He's showing how much he loves and respects his dad by listening to him and trusting him after their last moment was in anger. There's a reason why, given the film's nonlinear structure, that we still see Jonathan later on, years before his death, giving Clark that last needed push to accept his destiny. Then there's the ending action scenes, which I don't understand why people raise a big stink here, but not at other superhero films. The Smallville Slugfest, for example, has the likes of aircrafts crashing onto empty streets, a grain stack blows up, an IHOP gets new outdoor seating arrangements, and a Sears gets ventilated via Kryptonian airmail. It's pretty standard bloodless cape shit fare with seemingly no civilian casualties. All the destruction and loss of life people love to bitch about happens in Metropolis before Superman and Zod even throw down. It's all happening while Big Blue is on the other side of the world stopping the very thing powering the thing killing people. Unlike the first Avengers, where you have a full team of heroes trying to stop a twink with an antler fetish from conquering Earth, not destroying it, you instead have one guy saving the lives of every living thing on the planet. There's actually stakes here. Are you upset that he couldn't be at two places at once? That's Superman's big hang-up. He can't be everywhere at once. He can't save everyone, despite everyone expecting him to. He can't just spin the world backwards to use time travel because the screenwriters wrote themselves in a corner and derailed their movie by pulling some bullshit out of their ass. I'm just looking for some critical consistency here, folks. Okay, but when he does fight Zod, it's in the middle of the city. You mean like every other superhero cartoon and movie ever because it's more visually interesting than fighting in like a desert? See The Flash. And he does attempt to move the fights away from the city each bout. But also, let's be serious. One skyscraper fell and a bunch of basic bitch property damage happened. Holes through buildings, parking lots destroyed, shit like that. Again, don't conflate the attack prior to the fight itself. So if it bothers you that much, why weren't you complaining when Iron Man and Thor 2 let skyscrapers collapse in the Battle of New York? Well, Superman shouldn't have killed Zod. He would have found another way. No, Zod wanted to die and he forced Supes to do him in. Also, I find it hysterical that this is somehow so controversial when it's like the third time he's killed General Zod, and the most famous story in the Superman comics is him killing Doomsday. And it's not like he's proud to have taken Zod's life. You see how this destroys him having to do so. To me, these complaints essentially boil down to, I'm big mad that Superman wasn't able to save cats out of trees and shit because he was too busy saving more people in this one movie than the previous 5 films combined. He's not stopping bank robbers or saving Air Force One or even stopping the creation of Arizona Bay. He's preventing world extinction 2 times over, so not bad for his first day on the job. I agree, there needed to be a moment in the movie where Superman acknowledged the death and destruction of the Kryptonians' attack. But placing the blame for all those deaths at his feet or claiming he didn't save people is a ridiculous reach. Warner's has been its own worst enemy for years. They got immeasurably lucky with an auteur like Nolan making 2, yes 2, eat shit rises of the greatest superhero movies of all time. But they keep learning the wrong lessons, constantly second-guessing themselves, trying to catch up to Disney when they should have never even tried to imitate them. If they hadn't panicked when Man of Steel didn't make $1 billion like the Dark Knight movies did, shrugging off a solid-as-hell base hit because it wasn't a grand slam, if they had instead compared its take to other first films in their respective franchises like Batman Begins or any of the early Phase 1 Marvel films, they should have stepped back and went, we outperformed all of them. This is a firm foundation to work from. Let's not rush anything and just gradually build up our roster. Ben Affleck's Batman needed his own movie first. Cavill needed another sequel to set up things like Lex Luthor, Kryptonite, or have another physical baddie for him to duke it out with like Metallo. Then after that, you could have done a team-up movie, teasing future heroes and the prospects of a Justice League. Instead, Warner's was just like, Batman makes us money. Put Batman in it now, Snyder. You love The Dark Knight Returns, right? Do something like that. Also, we want you to do the Death of Superman story. Also, can you add Wonder Woman? Also, can you awkwardly shoehorn in a bunch of cameos from other League members? This ended with a movie, with the exception of pushing identity politics, exemplified all the worst aspects of modern blockbuster entertainment. Bloated, ill-conceived, undercooked, and pretentious. Batman v Superman is what killed the DCEU. It fumbled the ball set up by Man of Steel. Since then, Warner's has lost a decade with constant false starts and very few gems to show for all this retooling. And now they're doing a cinematic etch-a-sketch just to reboot the whole thing all over again. Look, I hope Superman Legacy is a great movie. I think it'll be. I'm just not sure if James Gunn is the best person to write and direct this given his style and the types of movies and characters he likes to do. I worry the inclusion of a gaggle of lesser-known DC heroes like Guy Gardner, Metamorpho, Hawkgirl, and Mr. Terrific will take focus away from Superman in his own movie, once again repeating the mistakes made by BVS. Which points again go to Man of Steel and the fact that it didn't feel the need to shoehorn in like 17 different cameos. It just concerned itself with being a Superman movie first and foremost. I'm also concerned that that hack Tom King is attached, and also that the writer of both Birds of Prey and now The Flash is on the writing team. And if that movie ends up being a dud, I hope it's not, but if it does, I can still say I got to experience a great Superman movie in theaters, even if it didn't deliver on everything I love about the character. When I think about it, Man of Steel is to Superman what the original 1989 Batman movie is to the Caped Crusader, in a lot of ways. Yes, they both get aspects wrong. They both share this strange proclivity to have one of their main characters scream through much of the movie, if not for totally different reasons. But jokes aside, both two achieve their core mission statement: to get the normies to understand why us nerds go gaga for these characters. You look online and you see it everywhere. I'm not even talking about video essays gushing about it. You just go to like any random ass video from Man of Steel on YouTube and you look at the comment section and you can see how fervent the love for this movie has grown in the decade since. I think it's easy to see why. It's a fun action sci-fi epic that promotes things that have become anathema to modern culture. It glorifies masculinity and the importance of fathers in a child's life. It has pro-individualist, anti-collectivist themes, and holds America and its values in some damn reverence. So if you're dead-ass tired of the self-parody that has become the superhero genre and want to watch something that actually resembles a movie, or maybe you just want to watch something new beyond the summertime mainstays of the likes of Jaws, Independence Day, and The Sandlot, give this a watch. I think you'll be surprised how much you end up liking it. Because in the end, as much as I want to give it a top-shelf cinema, Man of Steel is still some wonderful solid celluloid. Not flawless, but still very, very good. But that's enough for me. I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Comment, like, subscribe if you want. It'll help me out. But more importantly, until next time, stay safe out there.